What's going on, my soul family? Welcome back to another episode of the Awake with Jake show. On today's episode, I'm going to be dropping in and sharing with you 11 things that the ego hates. Now, before I get into that, I want to share with you that my course for healing your masculine and feminine energies is currently open for enrollment. So if you are looking to heal, harmonize, and embody both your inner masculine and feminine energies, then go to jakewooder.com/course to enroll today. And I just want to start out this episode by telling you how much I love you and how much I appreciate you being here with me. Thank you. So let's get right into this. The first thing that I have is stillness. The ego hates stillness. So for example, if you meditate, which I would invite you to meditate if you don't, to have a daily meditation practice, you will notice how strong your mind chatter is when you drop into a meditation. You start thinking, well, I got this bill to pay. I got to meet this person at this time. I got to pay rent. I have to be there to do this. And like your mind is going a million miles an hour. And that's really your ego at work. Your ego is so loud. Your ego is always trying to pull you out of the present moment. Okay? I really want you to think about this and sit with this. If you didn't have an ego, if you didn't have a mind, would you suffer? No. Your mind creates these attachments, creates these emotional attachments to things, to people, to experiences, to the past, to the future, and that is why you suffer. When the body dies, the mind dies, the ego dies, right? And the soul is eternal. The soul is the energy, the extension of God energy, and it is eternal. So the more we quiet down our ego and we listen to our soul's voice, the more that we step into our own enlightenment, okay? So the ego does not like stillness because the more you become still, the more you start to hear. So for example, if you have a daily practice of meditation or some mindfulness practices, you start to hear how loud your ego is, always clinging at things, that the lower desire things. The ego is all about survival. It's not that the ego is bad or good. It just is, okay? The ego is all about survival. It's all about lower desire stuff. We could say that the ego is really rooted in chakras 1 through 3. Safety, security, survival, personal power, sexual stuff, lustful stuff. And once again, this is not to demonize the ego. It's to bring awareness to the ego so we can transcend the ego to awaken. The second thing I have is vulnerability. Does this one strike a deep chord for you, being vulnerable? How hard is it for you to open up and be vulnerable? For you to share a wound with even a close person, let alone publicly, maybe on social media or a podcast or something like that. How hard is it for you to be vulnerable? For you to open up and share your story, to share your wounds? Now, from my personal experience, my ego was very thick for a long time. So I had to be a tough guy, machismo, wounded masculine, tough guy. I couldn't be vulnerable. My ego didn't want me to be vulnerable because if I was vulnerable, that would mean that I was weak. And I was being exposed. My wounds were being exposed. And that would be very unsafe. So the ego is trying to keep me surviving, keep me not feeling threatened, not feeling uncomfortable. The ego doesn't like to feel uncomfortable. And vulnerability makes people feel uncomfortable. But here's the thing about vulnerability. In all relationships, whether romantic, friendship, family relationships, if you are not willing to be vulnerable, you will not be able to bridge that gap between you and another person. It basically allows other people to feel safe with you showing them, hey, I'm a human too. Instead of like some spiritual guru and enlightened being, it's like, oh, wow, like they've actually been through some shit too. And that's okay. So when I started learning to be vulnerable, like sharing about my father wounds and the stuff that I went through in my childhood and the abuse physically and emotional, other people really started connecting to that message and like, wow, I went through that too. Like, oh, you had a sister that was a drug addict too? Wow, I have a brother or a sister that's a drug addict. I didn't know you struggled with that. Oh, you struggled with obesity and you were 80 pounds heavier? Wow, I've struggled with weight my whole life. Oh, you used to drink a lot? So like those little things connect with other people to show, hey, I'm human too. I'm a safe place. You can open up and share your wounds, if, of course, you're ready. I never force this upon anybody. I never try to force anyone to change or fix anyone. But by being vulnerable, you create a safe environment. And of course, I would use your discernment of when to be vulnerable. I wouldn't just say to go be vulnerable with everybody. But the ego does not like vulnerability because the ego looks at vulnerability as a form of weakness. Number 3, meditation. So as we were talking about back with the first point with stillness, meditation allows us to create space within ourselves so we can hear the games that the ego is playing, the lower self is playing. So what meditation really allows us to do is to not be so reactive to life, to experiences, to other people. And it kind of just creates almost like a space, like a cushion between us and life experiences. So we have time to process emotionally instead of just projecting and puking all of our anger, rage, sadness, grief, hurt onto someone else. The more we go inward, the more we get out of this matrix, of this trap, of this unconscious way of living, and we step forward into our truth and into our light. And we do that by having inner practices. You see, so much of our world is conditioned to look out there for answers. But the truth of your essence and your truth, the person listening to this right now, comes from within. All of the wisdom, all of the answers are within. So when I say something that resonates with you, you're like, yeah, that makes so much sense because your higher self already knew the answers to that. So when you want answers, go within, meditate, drop into a form of meditation, and you will start to hear the truth of the universe. The more you quiet down inside, the more you begin to hear how it all really is. We have to allow that truth to emerge because it has been stuffed down for so long because our mind, our ego is so loud that it just thinks it knows all the answers. You know, especially like as we grow older, our blinders tend to become more and more narrow to life and we stop being curious, we stop questioning things. That's why the beauty of the childlike innocence is so amazing because children are so inquisitive. They literally question everything. They're so curious about life. But as we grow older into adults, and I say this in air quotes, is we think we know everything. The mind is too full. Our mind is too full. And in Zen Buddhism, there's a great teaching around having an empty rice bowl. Because if your rice bowl is always full of rice, you can never allow for new rice to enter. So if your mind and your ego always thinks that it knows everything, then you're never allowing for new wisdom to enter. So through being curious, through doing meditation and asking the universe, asking your spirit guides, asking for the guidance of God, asking even to a strong, powerful reflection, whether it's a healer or a trusted friend or somebody like that, for just advice and using your discernment. There's nothing wrong with getting reflection, getting help, and asking someone, say, hey, I'm really struggling with this. Can I get some guidance around this? And whether it's physical or non-physical, ask for that guidance. Ask for the universe's guidance. Number 4, oneness. Now, this is really interesting because the ego wants to divide. It divides based on gender. It divides by skin color and race and religious views and political views. The ego is always trying to be divisive. It's always trying to divide energetically. But I want you to really take this away and resonate with this. The same energy that created me created you, whether you believe in God energy, source energy, Buddha, Allah, Krishna, whatever energy you believe in, whatever higher power you believe in, that created you, created me. We are all made of the same energetic fabric, okay? We are all intertwined through the same heartbeat of the universe. So if you deny that connection, which the ego does, deny the connection to higher self, to God, to source energy, because it doesn't believe beyond the ego. The ego thinks that it is almighty, right? And we've all met people that think they just have all the answers to the universe. But the more you learn you know nothing. So be humble. and realize that we are all one energy. So what you do to another person, what you hate in another person, you hate within yourself. What you see in other people, you see in yourself. What you love in other people, you love in yourself. Everyone in this universe is reflecting back to your own energy. They are mirrors of your own consciousness. Everything in this universe is just a simulation of your own mind's projections. I know I'm going a little deep with this right now, but I've had these realizations many times throughout my life, and I'm really starting to see all of the interconnectedness, the animals, the birds, the trees, the plants, the earth, the people, the beings, the cosmic energy. Everything is interconnected, and we are all a part of this together. So this is why I'm so big on raising the vibrational consciousness, the collective consciousness as one energy. Not separate, not based on race or any of this stuff. We are all one energy, all extensions of the God energy. So the more we go inward and we connect to that unity consciousness, the more we will elevate the vibrational frequency of the planet. And we will dismantle old belief systems that have been put in place to keep us unconscious based on fear-based programming and mind control techniques, okay? So the more awake we become, we see the illusion of the matrix. That's what it's all about, is getting free. You want to get to God. You don't want to stay here stuck, coming back to this earthly existence as many times as, you probably have, and we all have. Number 5, acceptance. Ooh, man, these are just hitting hard, because how many times in your life have you maybe gone through a breakup and you just couldn't accept that this relationship is over? I can't accept it. I want to just fix this. I need to fix this. I need for them to love me. Why wouldn't they love me? I'm so great, right? Or maybe you had the unworthy card pulled and you're like, why won't they just love me? Am I not good enough? This is still the trap of your ego, not accepting what is. Not accepting when that chapter of a relationship has closed, has ended. And it's so hard because we want to force things to work. We want to fight for this relationship. But you have to know when it's time. You have to know when that chapter, and you do know. If you're questioning it right now, you already know the answer, because if you don't know, you know. If you don't know, you know. So when you anchor into that voice, that soul's voice, and you start to accept the answers of the universe, you start to receive the answers of the universe. But so many people have wounded feminine energy. All human beings, men and women, in all genders, have wounded feminine energy. A lot of people do, not everyone. So they can't receive and accept the guidance of the universe. So the more you heal these wounds and this stuff, the more you see the universe for what it is, the more you accept the universe for what is. But accepting something is like the ego's way of feeling defeat. And the ego is very prideful. The ego loves to feel proud. So when you accept that a relationship is over, it brings me into the next point, which is surrender. You're surrendering and trusting into the flow of the universe. The ego hates surrender. And through surrender, we get out of our mind and we get down into our heart, and the heart starts to open through the grievance process. When we allow ourselves to grieve, we allow our heart to open. Now, what else is coming through right now is I want to remind you that your physical body is the bridge to connect the earthly to the cosmic, okay? Through the heart energy down into earth. You are the bridge to connect the earthly through the mother up through the cosmic, okay? So I really want you to understand that through the surrendering process, which I have done multiple times in my life when I did not want to surrender, finally the pain had just gotten so great. I'm like, screw it. Let's do it. Let's just finally just trust the universe. Through the surrendering process, my heart has been opened a little bit, eventually fully opened through allowing myself to feel my pain, through giving myself permission to feel my pain. That was one of my favorite mantras, and I still use it from time to time, is I give myself permission to feel my pain. I would go into the woods, I would go into the desert, I would go into nature, and I would just repeat this mantra. I give myself permission to feel my pain. I give myself permission to honor my hurt. And eventually, I would just start crying and crying. And I would say to myself, I stand with the presence of God to face these demons. And they are demons. I have seen their faces, bright yellow eyes, red faces hiding out in the shadows. And, if you'd never been exposed to this, you may think that's a little crazy or woo-woo, but I speak from personal experience. These things are real. There are truly dark forces in this universe that will latch to you like entities and keep you in a state of suffering and unconsciousness if you allow it. But through this surrendering, we pull back the veils of the ego that have kept us blinded to seeing our truth, that have kept us blinded from opening our heart up to receive love, to give love. You are infinite love. And let me remind you, in case you have forgotten that, because I think we do forget it. Through all of the heartbreak you have been through doesn't mean you're not worthy of love. Just because someone else didn't see your worth doesn't mean you don't deserve love. You do deserve love. And when you surrender into the pain that you feel, you allow your heart to open. You allow for the grievance. You allow for the medicine. You allow for the sacred healing. And that's what it's all about. That's where the juice is at. That crunk juice. Get you some of that universal crunk juice. Oh man. Number 7, asking for help. And when I say this, I also speak non-physical. Okay. We all have spirit guides. We all have universal signs and synchronicities. We all have the ability to connect to source energy, to God energy. And we can use and ask for help from other beings on this physical plane of consciousness. So if you resonate with someone and you really like their work and their messages, reach out to them and ask them for help. And if they're available and they get back to you and you feel alignment, do some work with them. Work with a healer, work with a shaman that you trust. I always just invite people to work with people that they feel aligned with, okay? Because like all industries, there are people out there who have lower desire systems of greed, power, lust, and they may take advantage of that. And I do not like when people in this space or any space, car salesman, business salesman, I don't care what you're in, do not prey on vulnerable people, okay? Do not prey on them for your own unconscious desires. And that's really what it's about. Truly anchor yourself into the vibration of love and ask the universe for signs, for synchronicities, for guidance, for help. And when it shows up, here's the key to this. When it shows up, do not be so stubborn to ignore it. Yes, you, the one listening right now. Don't be so stubborn to ignore the guidance of the universe. And if that manifests in a child or an adult or a bird flying across, a type of bird, maybe a cardinal or something, a blue jay, whatever sign or synchronicity shows up, when you ask for help, don't ignore it. When the universe comes calling, when the universe comes knocking on your forehead, accept the guidance of the universe. The universe is always trying to pour into you wisdom, signs for you to remember, for you to awaken, for you to remember your depth, for you to remember your soul. So we have to allow for the universe to pour into us. Listen to the universe. She is always whispering to you. And when you get quiet enough inside, you can hear her beautiful divine voice. Number 8, looking inward. You're hearing me talk a lot about right now going inward, meditating, stillness, having these practices, because the more you go in, the more you hear how loud your ego has been, the mind chatter, the busyness. Even look at the word business, break it apart. Busyness. There are so many things in place in this system, in this third dimension of consciousness, in this physical reality, to keep you busy, to keep you distracted, to keep you unconscious. Scroll on social media for 4 hours a day. Go to work for 10 hours a day and do work that you don't want to do like a robot. Believe me, I have done all of these things. And I have realized that most of the things that I was doing were just traps. They were traps to fill a void that could never be filled. Because I was distracting myself from dealing with my shadows, from dealing with my wounds. But the more we go in, the more we get out. And what I mean by get out is get out of the matrix. We are unplugging ourselves from the matrix and plugging ourselves into the universal grid of consciousness, the beautiful divine vibrational grid that is just waiting for you to plug into it. Imagine it would be like taking your old kind of worn out cell phone charger and getting the cell phone charger that charges your phone in 1 second. That's what it's like when you plug yourself into the vibrational grid of the universe and you step into alignment. You can feel in your body when you're in alignment and when you're out of alignment. So if you're doing work, maybe you're at a job that you can't stand, you feel like your body is out of alignment. You feel like you're forcing it by going there, oh, I have to go to work today. But here's how I look at it. I get to do this type of content. I get to do the work that I love because I stand in alignment. I stand in my truth. Now, I had the greatest job ever, but it didn't align with my soul. I was 23 years old at the time, making upwards of 6 figures. Safety, security, survival, retire at 60 years old. I had all of it, the health benefits, 401k, but it didn't align with my soul. It didn't align with my soul. So in 5D, I was being pulled out of 3D. Like the version 1.0 of Jake was being killed so I could birth the version 2.0. Now, it's a transition, okay? It's a transition, and you know when it's time. And if you're questioning it right now, whether it's a job, a relationship, a location, whatever it is, you know. And you start taking little steps towards it, but you do those little steps inwardly and you start tweaking and tuning your vibration so you can manifest the life that you desire. Like, it's not about the American dream, because the American dream, to believe it, you'd have to be asleep. Okay? It's not about living the American dream or any dream, because a dream, you're still sleeping. It's about awakening to your true, authentic self, to your divine, godly self. Let that land. Number 9, listening to others. Now, if you're listening to this episode right now, you probably don't really struggle with this one. But how many stubborn people have you met that just talk? And then when you go to respond, they're just waiting to respond. So my invitation for you is to develop a stillness in conversation, to develop the ability to seek to understand and not to reply to someone. Most people are just waiting to reply. They're not even trying to understand what that person is saying. But when you listen to the universe, to other people that are talking to you, you can learn things. You become a student of life. Because remember, the ego already thinks it knows everything. It's got this whole game figured out, right? So when you listen to others, when you listen to the universe, when you listen for the answers, when you listen for the signs, when you listen for the guidance, it will come. It will come. But when you listen, you receive so much more instead of just waiting to reply, waiting to be heard, which is really a deep-seated wound of not feeling worthy and always looking for approval, because you're like, well, I just want to be heard. I just want to be heard. I just want to be seen. I want to be heard. I want to be seen. And that's what's going through your mind. Like, I want them to hear my story right now. I want them to hear my story right now. That's like your ego. I'm like imitating your ego right now. So listen, slow down, breathe. Just breathe. Doesn't that feel good just to be still and listen and feel? Number 10, opening ourselves to love. Ooh, opening ourselves to love. Maybe you've been hurt really bad in your life. Maybe you had a father that never showed up, never supported you, and maybe exposed you to a lot of toxic masculine energy. We've all been exposed to toxic masculine energy, okay? Very much so. So opening yourself up to love, the ego doesn't like that, because the ego sees love as a form of weakness. But love is the highest vibrational frequency on this planet. Love is what you are. So if you've closed off your heart because of pain, then you're not operating in love, you're operating in fear. You've closed the gates to your heart because you're guarding yourself and you're putting up these masculine shields to protect yourself. You're armoring your heart. So your masculine energy is overpowering your feminine heart. And this is for all human beings because we all have both masculine and feminine energy. Your masculine energy is overpowering because it's your inner protector. It's overpowering and it's almost like hovering. Have you ever met a hovering parent before? Maybe you've done that yourself. Where they kind of hover around the child, or maybe you have a dog and you're like always hovering around like a little helicoptering your child, whether it's your pet or your cat or your zebra, whatever you got, like a kid, and you're hovering around it. It's almost like your inner masculine is doing that to you right now. Your inner masculine is hovering around. It's got like the big helicopter light shining down on the ground, hovering around. It's like, no intruders coming in here. No one's getting in this heart to love me. What? No one's getting in this heart to love me. What do you mean? You don't want to be loved? You don't want to feel the vibration of love? Do you feel worthy of love? And why don't you? Who hurt you so bad that caused you to close your heart? Who hurt you so bad that caused you to believe that you're not worthy of love? Because you are. You are worthy of love. And when you anchor into that, you stop this helicoptering of this masculine shielded energy from protecting yourself, and you start to open up your heart to receive love. And that is beautiful. The opening of the heart is so powerful and so beautiful. But it starts with knowing what you deserve. You deserve a beautiful divine love because that is what you are. Especially if you're here listening to the Wake with Jake show right now. I know you're worthy of love. And I'm just here to remind that and reflect that back to you. Anchor into that. Number 11, and the last one, is looking beyond the physical. The ego is really attached to the physical. So a lot of people get into physical, lustful relationships where they basically just use each other's bodies to masturbate, and they have like a 2-year one-night stand because you had an ego relationship. You didn't have a soul relationship. Now, like I said before, when we transcend the ego and go into soul consciousness, we transcend ego consciousness, which is like the physical, earthly stuff, all the lower desire systems, and we come into the soul consciousness, which is oneness with everything, oneness with the universe. We can develop that type of connection with another soul. You will only meet people at the level you've met yourself. You will only understand people at the level you understand yourself. You will only understand people at the level you have expanded your consciousness. All right. So if you're still in the second grade vibrationally, you're going to attract people to you in the second grade vibrationally. But as you start to climb the spiritual ladder, you start attracting people to you that are also doing the work. So as we look beyond the physical, we see people as souls. We see their energy of their heart. And that's when we start connecting into the unity consciousness. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune into this episode. If it brought you value, please take a screenshot of this and share it to your Instagram story and tag me in it. And once again, if you want to enroll in my course for healing your masculine and feminine energies, go to jakewooder.com/course to enroll today. And as always, stay open, stay loving, and stay connected to that beautiful source within you.